Rachel, the Oscars were last night. I'm going to move my water because I am fully going to kick that all over onto my laptop. Anyway, hello, everybody. The Oscars were last night. Rachel, what did you think of them?
I did not watch one single solitary moment. Okay, can I tell you why?
Okay.
So, I went to Kingston this weekend to visit my sister. Mm-hmm. My sister works on this place called Wolf Island, where they have a 2-star Michelin chef.
In Kingston, Ontario?
Yeah, he just wants to,
He wants to slum it, I guess.
He loves it. They, just absolutely incredible. So, my sister works there. She's made really good friends with this chef. Shout out Chef Jay. Elite chef. He used to be the private chef for the Weston family and left the Weston family because he was like, I'm out. I'm done. I want to cook on an island, basically. So I went to see my sister. He cooked us a 5-course meal. That was, I'm going to put a video out on it. I highly encourage you to look at it. One of the best meals I've had in my life. And you and I both know I eat pretty well. Mm-hmm. Especially when I'm in Europe. I eat pretty well. Yeah. This is one of the best meals I've ever had. It was absolutely incredible. But we stayed in the Wolf Island Hotel. Mm-hmm. Or not even a hotel. It's like, if you've seen the show Schitt's Creek, it's like the Schitt's Creek Motel.
Motel, okay.
But they had this apartment suite. It was 2,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, dining room. Absolutely incredible. But my sister brought her dog. And that dog was a menace all night, and I didn't sleep the whole night.
Penelope was acting a fool.
Yeah, I got 90 minutes of sleep according to my sleep band, which is not ideal when you're someone that needs 8 hours. Then I got no sleep on the car ride home. So last night, I went to bed at 9 p.m. And I woke up this morning at 8:30 without an alarm. I slept for 11 and a half hours. So that's why I didn't watch the Oscars. But I saw that Oppenheimer pretty much won everything.
You missed did you see the I'm Just Ken performance?
And I did see the I'm Just Ken performance.
Good. That straight up. Yeah.
Greta Gerwig win for best screenplay.
No, and you know what?
That's a joke.
She didn't. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you, Rachel. And again,
that's a joke.
I'm going to say something that's quite controversial. She deserved to.
You're out. We're not friends anymore.
She didn't deserve to. I watch more movies than you do.
Yeah, but the premise of the movie had a better message than any movie this year. You can't disagree with that.
Do you want to know the plot of the movie that won? Which was American Fiction. Won over.
I actually have seen that movie.
Yeah, the plot is that it's a black artist or a black author has been writing just normal stuff, but then they demand that he write something more black, urban. Basically people
lean into your
exactly.
roots.
It would not even do that. It's all patronizing and
absolutely.
And so he's like, you know what? I'll just write the most stereotypical filth, yeah. Whatever, and people just end up eating it up. And the whole time he's just I hate everything. I cannot believe this is what my art is being used for. And
yeah,
I got to tell you, man, it was tight, but I think that the right. I think it was look, either one could have won. But I think it was good. The one that I'm annoyed about, because again, I tried to watch.
You're a movie buff.
Yeah, I should be paying rent at one of the movie theaters here.
You probably should. Yeah.
But I am outraged that Emma Stone won over Lily Gladstone. From Killers of the Flower Moon. Lily Gladstone and Killers of the Flower Moon had one of the best performances.
That was such a great movie. What?
Well, Martin Scorsese is my favorite director, and I know
did
that's
that win any? Did that movie
won
win?
Nothing.
That's a joke.
It's
that's
ridiculous.
A joke.
And you know what? I love Robert Downey Jr. Don't get me wrong, but Robert De Niro's performance was the best supporting performance of the year in that movie.
In Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yes,
absolutely.
He was one of the most evil characters I've ever seen on film, and he did it perfectly. And you know what?
Speaking of Robert De Niro, did you see what he said the other day? I about died.
About Trump?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He said,
he's like, I can't play him because I can't get into his headspace.
Meanwhile, he's played the most evil dude. He played the guy who allegedly.
He played a cartoon shark, Mike.
Yeah, he played a cartoon shark, but he also I want to break it down. He played Jimmy the Gent in Goodfellas, a guy who just kills anyone and laughs about it. He played Frank Sheeran in The Irishman, who is the guy who allegedly killed Jimmy Hoffa.
Right.
Who was his best friend.
Yeah.
He's played Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver.
Some of the most evil characters of all time.
He played a young Don Corleone in the Goodfellas.
Love a Corleone.
And he's like, but not Trump. That's where I draw it. Like it's.
I'm
think
drawing
that's
the
hilarious.
line.
And like it's a type of evil that you can't get around. But yeah, look, Lily Gladstone had one of the most incredible performances ever. She could have won from. She's obviously a native actress. This was This is a story about like an atrocity in American history that no one had any idea happened until this movie came out, basically. And
unless you read the book, basically.
And she could have become the first Native American, I believe, woman or man to win an acting Oscar. It might have been, I think there might have been a man before them, but I can't even remember. And she could have done it for that kind of movie, and instead they gave it to Emma Stone, who did a great performance in Poor Things. Don't get me wrong. Poor Things is straight up one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen. But
I've never seen it, but I did see Killers of the Flower Moon, American Fiction, Barbie, and Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, far and away, best picture of the year.
Yes.
Not even close. But Killers of the Flower Moon being shut out is a crime.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable. But also, what are we doing? Like, we know what the Academy is run by. Like, we just do. We know who Hollywood is run by. And I'm not surprised to see a movie like Killers of the Flower Moon shut out based on the topics that it touches on. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Oppenheimer, you simply could not get around it. And I will say, I saw it won some award for, like, editing, which is nonsense, because it wasn't very well edited, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, the fault, like, to me...
I thought it was edited really well.
No, like, in terms of, like, camera angles, and there were better movies. Like, I think Killers of the Flower Moon was better from that perspective. There were blurry angles, I think
all of that was intentional. And also, that's cinematography, that's not editing.
So, sorry, the cinematography
and cinematography
award.
Won, I think it was Poor Things won cinematography.
There was an award, and I don't have it up because I just don't care enough about movies. Generally speaking, I don't care this much about any award show because I think it's all, this is the thing, is like, I like movies, and like, I appreciate that I hear all about movies from you. Mm-hmm. I value Mike's opinion on movies more than I value things like the Oscars, because the Oscars and the Academy is run by a group of people who don't actually reward people for their performances. Like, Leonardo DiCaprio winning for The Revenant and not The Wolf of Wall Street tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, like Leo not winning for any, like, he could have won. I could list off a million.
Gatsby.
He could have but he could have won for like Basketball Diaries. He could have won for What's Eating Gilbert Grape. He could have won, like, even if you want to go way back, and Wolf of Wall Street, and even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he was amazing.
Yeah, he was incredible in that one.
But yeah, if you take my opinion over the Oscars, then you're of the opinion that The Batman is the greatest movie that's ever been made.
Well, no, that's The Grinch.
But no,
alas.
I'm look, Emma Stone, she already had an Oscar. That's another thing too. Like, and she was amazing in this, but I just feel like this was the perfect moment, and also it was the best. It was just straight up the best.
Lily Gladstone was absolutely incredible.
It's really a shame. And but hey, other than that, the ceremony was pretty good. Like, it flew pretty quickly. I'm not sure if you saw John Cena be like basically naked on stage.
Oh, I did see that. I woke up to
funny.
Many a photo of that.
That was very funny. Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who both played Batman villains, talking about how Michael Keaton beat them up because he was Batman, which is very funny. I just thought it was great. And the reason why we're spending so much time talking about the Oscars is because I think the best performance of the weekend was John Tortorella in Coach's Rage.
On the night that his 2016 was being honored. Like, you could see 2004, sorry. You could see Brad Richards and Dave Andreychuk howling as it was going on.
Because it's just classic Torts. Like, he's the exact same. So John Tortorella got suspended 2 games and was fined $50,000.
Well, he was fined, but he's not paying it.
And which we'll get into. For basically, he gets ejected from the game. It was a nonsense ejection. And it was a nonsense ejection.
I spoke to somebody who, I've actually spoken to 2 people who heard what Tort said and thought the same thing. Like, that is a nonsense escalation of, like, to eject him is a nonsense escalation. So, yeah, I'm not going to get into what was said. I do know what was said. Nonsense escalation.
Yeah. And it was, they were down 4-0 10 minutes into the game, and the Flyers were just getting these penalties that made no sense. And it's a rookie referee that was doing it, basicid.
Brandon Schrader is his name.
And Wes McCauley was the veteran guy. So and to be fair, like, even I thought that it was Wes McCauley that did give him the old boot because Wes McCauley's a gigantic baby.
Well, that would be the second coach he's thrown out in the last month.
Did he throw out Keefe?
He threw out.
He
Sheldon.
was the one. How did that not get more play? That it was Wes McCauley that threw out Sheldon.
I'm pretty sure it was, or he either threw out Keefe or Don Granado. It was one of the two of them.
If it was Keefe, that would have been fodder for the next 2 days. It was probably.
I'm gonna have to ask. I'll ask Mike Johnson.
But yeah, this was. Listen, you know how I don't like refs. You know how I'm not a big believer in refs' rights, and I think that once again,
Mike doesn't believe that I deserve rights, which is why I stopped being a referee. No.
Yes, I don't believe.
Not why I stopped.
No, I don't believe you deserve rights because you're a woman. Let's be clear.
Solid. Yes.
Let's be clear here.
Hang on. Yeah.
Actually, you're a woman referee, so you're my least favorite thing in the world. Exactly.
Actually.
Less rights. If there's negative rights, if you can have
that's me.
That's you. No, but this was clearly a referee got frazzled. This rookie referee had never had a screaming mad John Tortorella right up in his face, attacking him personally, and
which wasn't even
and he just and so Tortorella suspended for 2 games. The Flyers CEO came out after the game saying, whatever he's given, if it's a fine, we're paying it. I'm paying it. You know
that, and you know what okay, so there's a couple things here. From a ref perspective, your job, Wes McCauley, because you are a veteran official and that is a rookie official. Your job is de-escalation.
Absolutely.
But he didn't step in until after Torts was thrown out. So I thought, Wes is, as much as people want to jump all over Wes, and I understand why, he is not the bad guy. No. Right? If you are in the National Hockey League and when coaches are bad, they're fodder for days. Sheldon Keefe has been foddered for 2 goddamn years.
Yes.
Right? GMs. Jim Benning was fodder for half a damn decade.
More than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? When you're bad, your players, they're dragged through the mud. Steve Simmons will call your mom. You are held accountable. Right? Your coach will sit you.
You're so bad that Steve Simmons calls your mom. That's funny.
They'll sit you.
Yeah.
In soccer, and this is where we're going, in MLS, if there is a request, a pool reporter goes down. It's not a scrum. One reporter goes down and gets, I believe it's 5 questions. It's 3 or 5. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's a lot.
Of the officials, right? You get 1. There's not a back and forth argument. They just get to ask the questions that they think would be beneficial. The NBA has the last 2 minutes report. But you know what they do?
They're bullshit too. It doesn't matter.
But at least it's there. At
least it gives an explanation so fans can go, oh, well, that's still bullshit, but whatever.
But whatever.
Yeah.
In FIFA, though, in Europe, this is where I think they get it right.
And FIFA doesn't get very many things right.
FIFA gets pretty much everything wrong.
Yeah.
How they handle their officials is 1,000% correct and should be the gold standard.
How do they do it?
If you have a bad game to the point where it impacts the outcome, they sent an official not to the equivalent of the AHL. They sent an official to the 4th league for a month and a half. And he had to earn his way back up to Premier Leagues, and he's not allowed to ref championship games for 3 years. So that would be the equivalent of...
No playoff games, basically?
No playoff games for 3 years, and you get demoted to the ECHL.
The 4th league is the SPHL.
But,
Yeah.
No, because there's Europe in the middle of that, the SHL or whatever. But because the NHL has, an officials association and whatever, there's nothing.
We like unions. We like unions. We want to say that.
We like unions, but I also think it's fair to call out a union for BS. And in this case, your union, the teachers union, protecting bad teachers and getting rid of good ones, not acceptable. Right? So I look at this and I go, the league, the NHL has to say, if there are enough issues here where your front page news consistently, you don't get to play you don't get to ref the playoffs this year. But
that means Wes McCauley wouldn't be shot.
But no. But because you would be shocked at how many other brutal officials. Wes is the lightning bolt because he is out there doing stuff. I will tell you for a fact there are players that prefer most of the players I talk to prefer having Wes because at least he has the stones to communicate with them. There are other refs that and I talked about this with Dave Jackson. There are other refs that won't even engage in conversation, and players hate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's one thing to not be accountable publicly, which I think is not good. It's entirely another thing to not even be willing to have a conversation with the players you're fucking officiating.
Yeah, so Elliot Friedman brought up this point, and it's important that it comes, like, which is a point that's been brought up by literally everybody, but it's important when it comes to Elliot, because he's one of the premier voices on the media side. And then I think Steve Dangle also backed this up with a different perspective, but like, or with a perspective that furthers it. But basically, it's just like, this is why, like, you're not protecting the refs by not making them available. You're actually hurting them.
Yeah.
Because, like, who knows what was said here? Because what this looks like is Torts started yelling at a guy. The guy got his feelings hurt, or the guy got scared and sent him away. Who knows what Torts said? Torts could have pulled a
short of a slur, kicking a coach out 10 minutes into a game is unacceptable.
But like, there's a scene in this. Have you ever seen the movie Semi-Pro with Will Ferrell?
Yes.
Yeah. So he could have Torts could have gone up to the ref, be like, "Suck my cock, I'll murder your family," and then like, yeah, okay, then you kick him out.
Yeah.
Then you kick him out,
You're
which
gone.
just happens in Semi-Pro, and he's like, "What did I do?" It's like, "You said S my C, Jackie. You can't say that."
Yeah,
like,
you can't do
exactly.
that.
So who knows? Maybe Torts said that, like, he did it.
Well,
but like,
he would be suspended for a lot more than
Yes.
2 games if he slurred.
exactly. And so, but like, who knows what he could have said? But right now, all the conversations about how much of a thin-skinned little dweeb this ref is for being like, "Oh, Torts was yelling at me, so I say go away. I don't want to deal with this anymore." Like, it's all it would have taken is, yeah, like you said in MLS, one pool reporter go down. It could be the PHWA chapter head who goes down.
Great, yeah.
And-
or at least elected.
Yeah, or an elected,
Person.
every chapter can basically elect the ref talking to guy, and then you send him down. He gets 1 or 2 or 3 questions or whatever.
And they have to be pertinent to
Yes.
like a situation. So
You
if
can't be
there's
like,
no
number 1, how dare you? You can't say
if it's
that. Yeah.
but not even that. If there's no controversy in the game, then we don't need the pool reporter to go down. Like
Yes.
in MLS, it's not an every game thing. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, so Liverpool Man City this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very clear handball in the box that went totally uncalled. And the guy got kicked in the chest.
Yeah.
There was no penalty called. In that situation, the pool reporter would go down and say, "What did you see on this? Why was a penalty not awarded?" We don't need a pool reporter for every game. But in this tort situation, what did he say that warranted him being kicked out? Mm-hmm. That's probably the only question you need there.
There should be, like, I know that there are NHL officials on hand at every game, like
Supervisors.
Like there's supervisors there. It should be, they're like, if something like this happens after the game, the representative should go to the supervisor and be like, "We'd like to speak with this person." The supervisor says, "Okay." They go down. You ask them two questions. Be like, what was the impetus for you to do this? Did he say anything to do this? Okay, cool. Then they report it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. They generate it into like a 250-word explanation. Takes 0 time at all. It gets sent out to the public. Now the public knows, okay, John Tortorella said X, Y, and Z. That's why he got kicked out.
Well, and it's not like, as an official, and I've done this because I've refereed like AAA games and whatnot. Like and I know it happens in the NHL.
It makes me sick. In my stomach.
Every single game, you fill out the game sheet, especially when there is a fight, there is a misconduct, there is an
You're
ejection.
wearing a ref uniform right now.
Actually, I'm wearing a Comme de Garçon shirt.
You're wearing a ref uniform right now.
And the stripes go the other way, thank you
You look
very
like a
much.
Foot Locker employee.
Oh, God. But basically, if there's an ejection, a major penalty, a misconduct, you have to write down what happened. Like, that is in your job. There is a section on the game sheet where you've got to write it down. So the league knows what happened. Make it public. This is why. This is what he said. I guarantee you they don't do that because a lot of refs throw coaches out for piss baby nonsense. And kudos to Mike Johnson for calling it out. Because I remember when Sheldon Keefe got thrown out, Mike Johnson on the broadcast said, "Why? He didn't say anything. I'm standing right here."
Yeah,
like,
it's
he
ridiculous.
didn't do anything. And so I think you're harming referees because now we're sitting here talking about how they're soft as shit when if it comes out that he actually was saying something that warranted an ejection, it paints Tortorella as the victim here, where if we actually knew what he said, maybe we'd have a little bit more of a discussion here. But I think you're harming the referees, and this nonsense of peeling things back from the fans, makes you look like you don't want to hold referees accountable. You certainly don't want to hold the Department of Player Safety accountable, for God knows what reason. And I think it does harm to the game, right? And I had people on Twitter yelling at me being like, no other pro sport does this. And I'm like, actually, in NFL, the official has to announce penalties
to the stadium.
And
then the stadium can go, ref, you suck, or bullshit, or something.
But at least they're announcing the penalties, and they say the number, and they say what they did, and sometimes we get an explanation of what they did, right? In soccer, you can actually, in FIFA, you can actually hear the conversation between the video assistant referee, so the situation room, and the official.
Last time we heard that, Tim Peel got forced into retirement.
So why is the NHL not doing it? And there is your answer.
It's a rookie referee. So we say, oh, he's a rookie referee. Maybe you didn't know, whatever. If you're a rookie referee, you've worked your way up. You don't just graduate from ref school and then go to the NHL.
Yeah, like my buddy Bo refs in the NHL.
Yeah.
He has been a ref since we were in high school. He's 30 now.
Yeah, you work your way up. You start in the ECHL,
and this
you
is
go to
his
the
second
AHL.
year in the league.
Exactly. So this guy he's had coaches yelling at him before. I don't
100%.
So it's just
Have you reffed minor hockey?
Yeah.
Like
exactly. Like he's had coaches yelling at him before, he's had players yelling at him before. I'm sure he's had worse than this, and yet he just went, "Oh, goodbye, John." Like I hate this guy. Hate him so much.
But also shout out Bradshaw. I'm excited for him to get to coach a couple games.
Oh yeah, okay.
Bradshaw is awesome. I think he's one of the most underrated coaches in the league.
Is he? Okay.
And I think Philly's going to turn this into a Philly versus everybody thing.
Oh yeah.
And I don't hate it.
Absolutely. Rachel, there's something about a guy with brass balls that I just respect. A guy who just every morning he gets out of bed, leaves for work, grabs his wheelbarrow, throws his balls into the wheelbarrow, and just takes them to work because he's got such big balls of steel. And that's John Hines.
My former boss.
Your former boss. Because what John Hines did is he essentially did the equivalent of you're down by 1 in the dying seconds of the game and you go for 2 instead of taking the field goal to tie.
He Dan Campbelled it.
He Dan frickin' Campbelled it. And what he did was it's a tied 3-3 game in overtime between and this is funny because it's against his former team too. I didn't even put that together.
And Nashville's a couple points ahead of them
exactly.
in the standings.
Minnesota Wild, Nashville Predators, tied 3-3 in 3-on-3 overtime. What does John Hines do? He pulls Marc-Andre Fleury to get a 4-on-3 advantage. And what did the Wild do? They score and they win the game. And why it's a big brass balls moment is he is leaving his net open in overtime. So that could have been it. We could be on here talking about, man, John Hines is a fucking idiot. Like,
I never would have said that.
He's not. But like we could
even if he got scored on, given the situation,
but
this
I think
was the right call.
a lot of people on Twitter being like, "What the hell was this guy thinking?" And also, if that had happened, it's not like the Wild would have gotten a pity point because I believe it's Rule 10.68.
Yep.
That says if you pull your goalie in overtime and get scored on against, you don't get the loser point. Like you don't get that overtime lost point. So he put all his chips on the table and thankfully it paid off.
I'm surprised that people didn't know the rule. This has always been this has always been something I know, and I'll tell you why I know it, Mike.
Why do you know it?
Because in 2018, who was I working for?
You're working for the New Jersey Devils.
And who was the head coach?
I believe it was Mr. Jonathan Hines.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, John and I actually had this discussion quite a few times in 2018 because in 2018, the Devils were in a similar position as the Wild are right now, which is basically we had to win, I believe, 18 of our final 21 games to get into the playoffs. And we knew, like, heading into overtime, we had to get the 2 points, and we needed regulation and overtime wins. So shootout wins didn't help us. The Wild are in the same scenario right now. They need ROWs. And so John and I had a couple conversations. He asked me to go away and do some research, and there weren't examples of it in the NHL, but there were examples of it in Europe. There were examples of it in the KHL. Thank you, Sergei Fedorov and Igor Larionov, of this being done and when you should do it, who should be on the ice, and how you should set up. The other thing is Minnesota has Jason King as their assistant coach. He runs their power play, and he is in charge of their 4-on-3. So this is something that he I worked with Jason King in Vancouver. It is something him and I had talked about. Not pulling the goalie, but what would you do on a 4-on-3?
Mm-hmm.
Like with an empty net, like let's say you have 4-on-4, they take a penalty, right? In the dying seconds of the game, you got to tie the game up. What would you do? Like, how would you set it up? Kind of thing. With an empty net. Because it's different. And so, when I saw Fleury go to the bench, immediately I stood up and I was like, oh my God, he's doing it. Because the conversations John and I had in New Jersey were, like, what could go wrong, who you have to have on the ice. Because you have to have players on the ice that are capable of puck recoveries. Because if you get a shot, you got to be able to recover it so that they don't just shoot it down the ice and score, kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be very judicious about your personnel that are on the ice. Ray Shero basically kiboshed the entire idea. He was like, you are not doing that. We will just play for we will take our chances in the shootout to get 2 points. You are not fucking doing that. And, like, as a GM, that's his call. Mm-hmm. That's fine. We ended up making the playoffs, so it was pointless anyways. What's funny is, guess who's employed by the Minnesota Wild right now?
Who?
Ray Shero. So he probably, poor man, Ray, love you, dude, but John went brass balls on this one, and it paid off. And I kind of love it.
Absolutely.
I think he deserves a ton of credit.
I love when...
And his players buying in?
Absolutely. Well, think about that. Like, what I love is that this is such a vote of confidence to the players, where you go, dude, this guy was, like, this guy believes in our offense so much, believes in the players that were on the ice, the players that are on that bench so much. They pulled his goalie in overtime just to give us a bit of an edge because he believed that we could do it. Like, if you're a player, you go, man, like, this guy, it's the same thing as like why players love Dan Campbell so much. It's for a multitude of reasons, but one of them is if you're one of the offensive players and it's 4th and 1 and he's like, absolutely go for it. Every time. You're like,
yeah, unless you're on your own, like, 8-yard line, he's going for it.
Even still, like, you probably do it. It's Dan Campbell. But, like, you have such faith in us as an offense. Like, we're going to come through for you. I guarantee you they saw that, and they're like, we cannot get scored on here, or else our coach will never live it down. Because he has faith in us. Like, we have to give him a reason to believe. And absolutely. And so that's why... That's a big, like, this might be a turning point this season where he's a new guy. He comes in, he replaces a guy in Dean Evison who is very beloved in that organization, who maybe got fired, maybe not justifiably just because it was terrible goaltending that did him in. And, the Wild, they've had a very difficult year. They're fledgling a little bit. And he comes in mid-season. This might be the moment where he earns that respect and earns that sort of, builds that relationship and trust and connection with the players, especially like the game after a trade deadline where they sold off a lot of character guys like Connor Duham, or Brandon Duham, Connor Dewar, guys like that. They all went away. This is a big moment.
Yeah, I kudos to Hines. It's not something that I think a lot of people were like, oh, like he must have just like thought about it. No. This is something that he's been thinking about for 6 years. Mm-hmm. Like, this has been something that he has. I honestly think Rolly Melanson, who was our goalie coach at the time in New Jersey, would have had a stroke if he would have done it.
Yeah.
But this has been, like, John is a very forward-thinking guy, and I have taken so much heat for defending him for being a forward-thinking guy. And I would just like to say, fuck all of you, because he just proved me so right. He's the first coach in NHL history to do it. And that, by definition, makes you a forward-thinking coach. If you're willing to pull your goaltender in overtime, you are forward-thinking. Like, that's sort of the end of that. So I'm super happy to see it. And had Nashville not been on this, like, 9-0-2 run at this point, like, Minnesota would be in a playoff spot. And so
these, you're right. This is a crucial 2 points.
It's crucial for them. And so I'm really happy that it worked out. I will be interested to see now. Like, you look at Nashville canceling their U2 concert. They've 9-0-2 since. You don't think that these players have an entirely different belief system now that they realize, wow, this guy, our management might not believe in us, but our coach believes in us. And he's right there in it with us. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see what the next few games looks like for the Minnesota Wild. I'll be watching because you know what? The bounces might not go their way, but you're not going to outwork them.
No, absolutely. All right, Rachel, it's time for our CanTorque deep dive. Now, CanTorque makes rugged, hardworking, industrial torque tools for heavy equipment operators around the world. They are proudly Canadian and manufacture everything out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada for heavy industry around the world. Their new website tells their story, 20 years in the making. Visit cantorque.com today and ask Colin for more details. We love us some CanTorque tools. All right, let's talk about a big, I would say the trade that left me flabbergasted.
The trade is 1 for 1.
Yes. The trade that left me most, other than the Thomas Hurdle thing, because that came out of nowhere.
That doesn't
even count. It was like a buzzer beater. It doesn't really count. But the trade that left me the most flabbergasted, where I was just like, what? I did not see that coming at all, was Bowen Byram for Casey Mittelstadt. And it's a very unique type of trade because we've seen very slim case studies of this in the past, where it's a young player gets traded. They're basically two young players in different positions within their respective organizations get traded for each other to address needs, because Colorado needed who they think is a second line center. They went out and they get Casey Mittelstadt. They needed help down the middle. That was their Achilles heel right now. They had a surplus of D in the back end, especially with Sam Girard coming back, and they needed help up front.
There's an argument to be made that Colorado has, Vegas now has the best top 4, but Colorado's in second place. Makar, Taves, Girard,
Walker.
I don't even know who, but Makar, Taves, Girard,
and Sean Walker. They got Sean Walker at the deadline.
Yeah, but he's their bottom pairing guy for them. Either way, but there's an argument to be made. Taves and Makar on their own are better than
Manson and
Girard.
Girard.
That's the Manson. Thank you, is the other one. Okay, that top 4 is probably the second best top 4 in the league outside of Vegas, and it is the best top pair in the league, and it is not close. Theodore Pietrangelo, great pair. Makar, Taves,
no,
that's gonna be Team Canada's top pair at the Olympics or at the World Cup of Hockey, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, it will.
They're that good. They're that good. And so when you have Bowen Byram is in a situation where he's 22, going to be 23 in June, he's never, ever going to play ahead of Makar. Ever. He's never going to get power play time because Makar is on Unit 1 and Taves is on Unit 2. So he's not even going to get that. And like you said, Colorado needs centers because they lack depth up front. We have seen that be an issue. And if you're going to go through Dallas and Winnipeg and Vegas, who now has a surplus of forwards for
now has a
reason,
friggin' they're the Harlem Globetrotters right now.
Yeah, you need some depth. Nathan McKinnon cannot do it all.
Yeah.
And so I think Buffalo got the better player in this trade, but when you draft well, when you develop well, you get a surplus of assets. You can afford to make that kind of trade.
And that's what they did. The thing is, this boggled my mind because Bowen Byram is such a promising and effective defenseman, even in his own right now. But he is a guy who changes. You have him on your back end. It's huge. I saw it during the Cup final, or on that Stanley Cup run as a whole. But having Bowen Byram in your basically in your bottom 4 on defense, outside of Taves and Makar, but that was one of the difference makers in okay, you're getting caved in or whatever. Well, Byram will come out here and he'll prop up Jack Johnson, who he was playing with at times, and he's 21 at that point. He's still
20.
He was 20.
He's a child.
20 at that point, coming back from serious head injuries, which is something to take into account here.
And this is not the first time Colorado has looked to use their deep prospect pool to acquire help up front. I know when I was working in the NHL last season, last season, that when Colorado was trying to get a second line center, Bowen Byram was the guy that was brought up in multiple deals because they wanted an impact player. We're not even talking Casey Mittelstadt. It would have been Bo Byram plus.
Yeah, for a big name guy.
Yeah, we're talking about 90-point players here. And so it's not that they were shopping him. It's just Bo Byram had such value that other teams said, if we're giving you our 90-point player, you are sending us Bo Byram, and that's the end of that. And you're going to send something on top of that probably an Alex Newhook at that point before he got traded to Montreal, whatever the case may be. But like Bo Byram was the pillar of the trade discussions because so many other teams were interested. I know Toronto was interested under Kyle Dubas. I don't know now, obviously.
Of course they would. Well, no, Byram's too small for them to be interested.
But like, of course you would be interested in a really good defenseman. Like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
Right? So Bo Byram's had interest, and it's interesting that Colorado was able to recognize that, okay, Byram's never going to be, he's never going to hit a ceiling with us because we have the best defenseman in the league on our team.
Yeah. And even if he played as offside, it's not working out. Like
it wouldn't matter. So we might as well address an area of need. And yeah, we might be giving up the best player in the deal, but we're in our contention window now. We care about now, similar to Vegas. We care about now. So Bo Byram gets you that second line center that can put up 60 points.
I just wonder if it was that, if that was the second line center they should have gone for.
That's where I wonder.
Like
I think there are better options.
Yeah, like could you not have got? I saw that and I'm like, listen, Mittelstadt's. First of all, I thought I was fully convinced Mittelstadt was like 29 by now. I feel like we've been talking about Casey Mittelstadt forever, like for as long as I can remember. And
he'll be 26 at the end of this.
And he's only 20. He's younger than we are. Like that's crazy. I remember like Casey Mittelstadt, like World Juniors. You know, like him being this insane prospect that Buffalo was hinging all their hopes on, and obviously he stumbled out of the gates, and that sort of soured his reputation. But he's put it together a lot more in recent seasons.
Yeah, so this year and last year he's really put it together.
Absolutely.
But there was a legitimate concern. Like I remember when I was in Vancouver,
serious bust
and
talk.
we were having discussions all around the league and whatever. There was serious discussions about, is Casey Mittelstadt an NHL player? So to go think about it, in that same season, Bowen Byram was a key cog in the Colorado Stanley Cup winning team. So to go from basically a bust to acquiring Bowen Byram, I think is a huge win for the Sabres, because the Sabres now have arguably the best young top four.
Like they have the top four with the most potential, I'd say.
Absolutely.
In being Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, Matthias Samuelsson, and Bowen Byram. And then
that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and we were talking, and that's going to be a problem
they
for
have
years to come.
3 defensemen that are better than anyone on Montreal, anyone on Ottawa, anyone likely on Toronto, maybe outside of Morgan Rielly. But by the time they're in their primes, Morgan Rielly is going to be on the downturn. So fair to say, like what?
Sorry.
3 defensemen,
Rachel,
not 1,
Rachel,
3.
Toronto's got Joel Edmondson.
Yeah, I don't.
Can either of these guys cross-check like he can? That guy can cross-check like.
Owen Power can.
Yeah, it's true.
But that's the thing is, like, they have 3, and I left Matthias Samuelsson out, but that's still a really good defenseman.
Absolutely,
like,
that's a legit, like a very good number 4. Like a
you're very happy. If
a
he's
lot
your
of
number
teams
4.
have him as their 3. He's a good, like Buffalo has him as their number 4.
Like I think Montreal has something with David Reinbacher. They do not have Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin with David Reinbacher. Like Ottawa has something with Jake Sanderson. They do not have Dahlin, Power, Byram with Jake Sanderson. Like he's the 4 on that team, and that is where you have the discussion of like Buffalo is starting to parlay a ton of their prospects into proven NHL hockey players. Like Alex Tuch, he might be the next captain. I think it should be Dahlin, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Tuch, because Tuch very clearly wants to be in Buffalo. Yes. He's from Buffalo. He gets it. He's already wearing an A. Like you have...
There are a couple of reasons why I think Tuch should be the captain. Number one is that, or I'm not going to number them, but basically he came in at a time, he's from Buffalo obviously, so that's big, but he was one of the main returns for Jack Eichel, which closed a chapter in that history. And that was a chapter of shame. They shouldn't have had to trade Jack Eichel, but they did because of mismanagement. And not only that, he came into Buffalo as a local guy, as one of the main key returns for their former franchise face, and he came in at a time when no one wanted to be in Buffalo. And he came in with the mentality of, I want to be here. And
it's really,
and he's being good.
You can tell that him coming in there has that infectious I want to be here has bled in.
It's given pride
to everyone else. Like Rasmus Dahlin saying basically the equivalent of like, I don't want to play anywhere else. Like,
yeah, I want to spend my entire prime here, basically. Yeah.
Owen Power signing the extension, huge. Like Tage Thompson signing his extension, huge. Like Buffalo is becoming a place where players want to play now. The only thing that upsets me is that Rick Jeanneret is not around to see it because, God damn it, it would have been incredible to see that. But yeah, like I think Buffalo wins the deal in the sense that they got the best player, but I think Colorado gets a player that helps them in their contending window, and that matters. It'll be interesting to see sort of how each player plays out, and we'll dive in right now to some other one-for-one trades. There's always a team that wins and loses, and yeah, like I think there's really only one scenario where both teams lost, and that's, I think, the first trade we're going to talk about.
Okay, well, you know what? I don't even know if they both lost. I think at the time it made a lot of sense, and it was both contributed in certain ways.
And this is similar to the Mittelstadt Byram deal.
So basically, this is probably the closest comparable we're going to get. Like in terms of the age of the players, we're going to go through a couple case studies here, but the age of the players and like the roles that they play. The first case study obviously is the one that everyone thinks about is Seth Jones for Ryan Johansson.
Yeah, so you've got Ryan Johansson was a little bit older. So is Casey Mittelstadt. Seth Jones came to Columbus, immediately started playing like 25 minutes out of Nashville after being the bottom pairing guy in Nashville.
Where did Byram get picked, by the way? Was he fourth
overall? So same like Seth Jones.
So Seth Jones and Byram were both fourth overall.
Casey Mittelstadt was 8th. Ryan Johansson was 6th.
Yeah, so it's almost
identical. Pretty much the same. Yeah. But Bowen Byram comes in the 2 games with Buffalo, averaging 25 minutes. So it's like pretty much identical from that perspective. Different types of defensemen. Both wear the number 4, oddly enough. That's really funny, actually, now that I think about it.
They were both 4th overall picks. Like 4. There
hey! Yeah. And then you've got Ryan Johansson went to Nashville. I believe they went to the Cup final.
They did.
With him.
Against Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And then, like, you look at it, and Ryan Johansson's really fallen off to the point where Barry Trotz was like, we can't have you.
And to the point where the Philadelphia Flyers now are like, you are not a part of our future.
Well, he might be injured. So Elliot Friedman reported this on 32 Thoughts today, is Ryan Johansson was like, I would like to reconcile, and apparently Torts was open to it. And then it kind of came out that he's a little banged up, so they were like, whoa, okay, let's hang on a minute here. Because we're not going to inject you in here if you're injured, and that's a problem, right? But with Ryan Johansson, he was a contributor on a Stanley Cup final team, and I think Casey Mittelstadt can be that. He was a second-line center. Seth Jones, Columbus, ended up being traded again.
Yeah.
He was then moved to Chicago because he didn't want to re-sign in Columbus. I don't think, and Bowen Byram has 1 more year and then he's ARB eligible. He's 1 more year at 3.85. I don't think Buffalo's going to have that issue with him.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's going to be near the same scenario. So, but Seth Jones, it is entirely possible that Bowen Byram has the same impact on Buffalo that Seth Jones had for Columbus. And it's just, I think Buffalo will be more successful as a team.
And if you remember, Seth Jones, he had a fall off, but for a while he changed Columbus's sort of outlook.
That series, the play-in series against Toronto, he was their best player, and Absolutely. It was not close. He was the best player on the ice.
Seth Jones had 2 top 10 Norris finishes with the Blue Jackets,
and they were earned.
This was not like, people look at Seth Jones now and he's a shell of himself. He's on a team that he's got like the worst contract in the league, and he's on a team that is not winning anything anytime soon. Obviously you have Connor Bedard, but still, and you look at that and you go, okay, well, this is terrible. And then you also look at Ryan Johansson, a guy who, like, the Philadelphia Flyers are basically being like, we don't want you near here. Like, I know that there's some injury stuff, but it was reported right around
he's fallen off massive.
Yeah, and fallen off. Both of these guys have also.
He was bought out in Nashville.
Yes,
bought out.
And both of these guys too have histories of maybe some friction in the locker room as well. So it's very interesting. There's been nothing with that with Mittelstadt and with Byram. They both seem like lovely young
Alex
men.
Tuck said that Casey Mittelstadt is one of the smartest hockey players, hockey sense-wise, he's ever played
Well,
with.
he went. Well, yeah. Well, I'm saying, like, where did Middlestat go to college? Didn't he go to like an Ivy League school?
I believe he was at Boston College.
Okay. Well,
I
smart
want to
people go
say it was Boston College. Yeah.
So like a lot of this is similar, but it's funny how both these guys, they really hit downturns like at a certain point. Like whether it's due to injury, I think a lot of it's due to, like, a good chunk of it's due to injury with Johansson. He had some massive injuries to deal with, and also with Jones, he was out for a long time, and it seemed to have hampered. He sort of lost a step. But this is as close to a comparable as you're going to get in two teams that had two very distinct surpluses and two very distinct weaknesses, and they swapped two guys to account for it, and it worked in the short term.
I think there is a better chance of Byram working out for the Sabres than there is a Mittelstadt working out for the Avs. And
Absolutely.
I say that I think both are going to work. I would just like to say I think both are going to work, but I think there's a better chance of Byram working out for the Sabres more than Mittelstadt for the Avs, and it's for one reason.
What?
Bowen Byram, yes, he has his injury history, but he has proven that as a playoff player, he can play, even though he's small. When the going gets tough,
He won a Stanley Cup.
he can play.
Yeah.
Casey Mittelstadt is in his second season where he's been good. So he's been very inconsistent, but he is 6'1" and he weighs 195 pounds. When you are playing against the Dallas Stars, who have up the middle Rupa Hintz, giant of a human being, Wyatt Johnson, giant of a human being, Matt Duchene, veteran, also 215 pounds. Then you're playing the Vegas Golden Knights, whose center depth, Mike, is Jack Eichel, Thomas Hertl, Chandler Stevenson, William Karlsson, and Nick Waugh. I've just named 5 guys there. So one's getting moved to the wing. And then you're playing Winnipeg, Mark Scheifele, Adam Lowry, who is literally enormous, Sean Monahan. Like, you're playing against much bigger competition than you're playing in the East, where, like, you're dealing with Tim Stützle, Nick Suzuki, obviously Austin Matthews, Patrice Bergeron, different. But Sasha Barkov is another one. But think about it, Braden Point, not all that big, right? Sasha Barkov is big, Austin Matthews is big. The list pretty much ends there, right? So you're going into the Western Conference where it is known that it is bigger. Anze Kopitar, Quentin Byfield, like, mammoth human beings. Even Anaheim has Mason McTavish and Leo Carlsson, who are both 6'4". Like, that is my concern about Mittelstadt, is he able to succeed in the style that is played in the Western Conference? I have no doubt he has the talent. No doubt.
Does he have the girth? That's what
I think he's going to have to bulk up.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, and honestly, I think it's a great decision by Colorado to use their surplus. I have less concerns about Byram fitting in than I do about Mittelstadt, but I still think both are going to be huge pieces for their team. I don't think either one of them is going to be a bust in the way that Jones/Johansson ended up being.
Interesting. All right. The next one is obviously, I would say, the most famous one for one trade, in it being Taylor Hall for Adam Larsson. Now, it's difficult to obviously connect the points with these two, because one's an offensive forward and the other one is a very much stay-at-home defensive defenseman. Taylor Hall, before he got traded to New Jersey, in that 1-for-1 trade, he had 328 points in 381 games. He was 24 when he got traded. And Adam Larsson had 69 points in 274 games. I believe he was around the same age. He might have been 23.
He was a second pairing defenseman.
Yes, he was a second pairing defenseman. At Edmonton needed defense. New Jersey needed offense. They swapped these guys. Taylor Hall went on 2 years later to win the Hart Trophy. While you were there, it's great, and make the playoffs that one time.
He was the team's best player for the entirety of his time there.
Absolutely, yes.
And it was not close.
Yeah, Adam Larsson went back, and boy, oh boy, look, he was good in Edmonton. He averaged 20 minutes a night. He was a solid second pairing defenseman, I guess, for them.
They made the playoffs twice. I believe they made the Western Conference. No, semi. They won one round.
Yes, they won one round, but hey, in Toronto, that is celebrated. But this was clearly, both teams did not achieve playoff success. However, one team got an MVP out of it. The other team got a solid second pairing defenseman, a good 4.
This is not the same.
So I think if it were to work out this way, I think the Buffalo Sabres would, they would jump into Lake is it Erie that they're on?
Yes.
Yes, they would jump into Lake Erie.
Like, yeah,
It'd be
I
tough.
mean, listen, Adam Larson is a good defenseman.
Yes.
There is no debate about it.
No bones about it.
He is a solid second pairing defenseman. No bones about it. However, similar to the Joe Thornton trade of years ago, if you trade a Hart Trophy winner, that is not great, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Right? If you trade a guy who goes on in a 1-for-1 to win a Hart and you do not win a Stanley Cup, because if Edmonton would have won a cup, then it doesn't matter. They don't care, right? But if you trade a guy who within a couple of years goes on to win a Hart Trophy because you thought that he wasn't a part of the solution, that is maybe not the best look.
Yeah. It's a Peter Chiarelli masterclass.
And it's funny because when I remember I had just been hired in New Jersey, and then I moved down there, and Taylor started going on this run where he broke the franchise record for consecutive games with a point. Like, he broke a Patrick Elias record. That guy has his number retired.
Yeah, it's massive.
Like, it's
a big deal.
Yeah, it's a massive deal, right? And even Patrick Elias at the time was working for the organization, was like, this is a different level of player. Like, this is different, right? And so I remember asking Ray, it was leading up to the trade deadline, and we were looking at deals that we were going to make. And I smirked over because we were all laughing one night. And I go, the trade is 1-for-1. And he starts howling. Like, he is dying of laughter. And I go, I have to know, like, how is that even a thing? And Ray is one of those guys. I think Ray deserves a ton of credit for being one of the best traders in the league. Like, he is really good at making trades. He goes, honestly, I knew we needed an impact forward, and Edmonton was struggling, so I just called him up and I said, these are the guys on your team I like. What do you think? And it kind of went from there. And I'm not going to get into the rest of the details of it, but basically Ray was like, I want Taylor Hall. And
wait, Ray initiated the trade talk?
Yeah.
Wow. I would have thought it was the opposite. Like, I would have thought Edmonton's looking to basically punt this guy out of town. And they were like, hey.
Well, Edmonton was looking at moving Taylor Hall, but they hadn't actually had a team call and say,
they took the first deal they got, like.
Yeah.
Oh,
that deal
Peter
came.
Chiarelli.
So.
Love it.
That deal came together in less than a week.
That's crazy.
Less than a week. I'm not going to go into all the details, but Ray Shero won that trade.
That's insane.
And it was not all that close.
All right, another one that, maybe people forgot about, but it's very similar to this as well. It's Chris Pronger for Brendan Shanahan. The St. Louis Blues sent Shanahan to the Hartford Whalers, and the Whalers sent Pronger to the Blues. Listen, from here, both players, they were both young at the time too, both players went on to become Hall of Famers, to win cups, to win awards, to score many, many points. It's great. However,
right. Like, it's kind of similar to Hall and Larson in the sense that, like, Chris Pronger was a defensive defenseman. Brendan Shanahan was a scoring winger. And, like, if you look at it, like,
Pronger turned into an offensive defenseman.
He turned into one. But, like, Adam Larson, in all but one season, which was the season Taylor Hall was actually playing hurt for most of it, Adam Larson had a worse expected goals differential than Taylor Hall did. Right? So, like, it wasn't even that, like, yeah, he was a defensive defenseman, but it wasn't even that good at being a defensive defenseman. Whereas with Chris Pronger here, like, I think we can kind of both say, like, you traded Hall of Famers 1-for-1. Like, they're both Hall of Famers.
But the Blues won the trade because Pronger went on to be nearly a point per game defenseman with the Blues. He won a Norris with the Blues, and he had 5 top 5 Norris finishes with the Blues. Whereas
that's
Shanahan,
pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. He was cemented. I believe he was a captain for a bit. He was cemented as one of the best players in Blues history, and up there with Al McInnes as I would say the best defenseman that organization has ever seen. Shanahan, on the other hand, he only ended up spending 76 total games with the Whalers. He spent basically a year and a half.
So basically, you have to look at what he was then moved for.
Yes.
And then the fact that the Whalers basically didn't exist after that.
So
But that's not an indictment of Brendan Shanahan. That's an indictment of the Hartford Whalers.
But if we look at this trade with Byram at Mittelstadt, and if Byram goes on to win a Norris and do all this stuff and spend like 10 years with Buffalo, and Mittelstadt doesn't really work out that much, and he ends up getting traded midway through next year. But then he goes on to have a good career. We'll still look at this trade and go, okay, well, the Avs lost this trade.
Right, but if the Avs win a cup this year,
yeah, then it's totally different.
Then it's like, okay, both teams got pretty much exactly what they needed.
Yeah.
The Avs want to win now. The Sabres are preparing for the future. Both teams get exactly what they needed. And yeah, like it's crazy that Chris Pronger and Brendan Shanahan
were traded for each other.
Were traded for each other.
It's crazy.
And then they ended up both working at the NHL.
In player safety, I believe.
Yeah, in player safety. Like, it is extremely funny that Chris Pronger is working in player safety, given what he did.
Given the carnage that he has wrought. Yeah.
But both Hall of Famers. Whereas, like, I think we can both agree, like, neither Taylor Hall nor Adam Larson is going to be a Hall of Famer. No. And as much as that pains me to say, because obviously, like, special place in my heart for Taylor.
It's health, man.
But, yeah, I mean, won an MVP.
Yeah.
You
can't take that away from him.
Exactly.
He won MVP.
Like, won an MVP, and that is that.
And look, I know that McDavid was very young when this race was going on, but he beat out Connor McDavid for an MVP. Like, regardless.
Yeah, well, he beat McKinnon that year.
Beat McKinnon and
it was McKinnon Hall that were really battling, and I mean, Taylor won because he basically dragged our team to the playoffs.
Absolutely, he had like 40 more points than the next player on the team. Like which is the definition of most valuable player.
Without Taylor, we were a lottery team,
absolutely.
And it was not even gonna be a thing. Yeah, so
then,
that was an interesting sort of 1-for-1. I feel like that was a situation, the Pronger Shanahan one, where it was like neither team knew what they had, and you can't really fault them for that. And both went on to have Hall of Fame careers.
Yeah.
So over the balance of their careers, you could make the argument that was pretty even.
Absolutely. All right, and then Rachel, here we are. Rask for Raycroft. We're going to slide this one at the end. I think it's pretty up in the air who won this trade. But this was obviously these are their same position, so it's different. But like this is a scenario where the Leafs felt like they needed a goalie now, and the Bruins were like we have a goalie, so we don't need this guy. So let's take a bet on a young prospect. And obviously Andrew Raycroft, he only spent 91 total games with the Leafs. He finished with a 39, 34, and 14 record, which is under 500, and he had an 890 save percentage, which is actually higher than I thought it was. It ended up being. Whereas Rask, he's a Hall of Famer, or a future Hall of Famer. He finished with a 921 career save percentage. He won a Vezina, a Stanley Cup, and a Jennings in 15 years with the Bruins.
So I told you some stuff before we recorded. I held one detail back that I'm going to tell you on the show.
Okay.
In that original deal, the Bruins asked for Pogge. And the Leafs said no.
I'm going to kill myself.
Can you imagine the difference? Yeah. And if you haven't read Richard Petty's book,
you know what?
And you're a Leafs fan, I highly recommend you do. Because there is a situation where Brian Burke is asked by Richard Petty, hey, what do you think? And he goes, he's not going to make it. I would have kept Rask. And that is the end of the tale, where everyone, including Steve Dangle, wants to put a chopstick through their eye.
You know what? Toronto would have, like the Leafs, those Leafs would have ruined Rask anyway. He would be,
honestly, yeah, probably.
He would have been playing in front of Mike Koska in Corbinian Holzer,
Garnet Exelby,
and Jeff Finger, and it just
Pavel
wouldn't have worked
Kubina.
out. Exactly. All right. Well, we've reached the end of the podcast here. Who knows what will happen with this trade? But these are some case studies of the most prominent 1-for-1 young player trades. Anyway, reached the end of the podcast. You can follow us on YouTube, subscribe to Twitch, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, pretty much any podcatcher you can possibly think of. We are there. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that. And obviously donate to our charity of choice, Jumpstart. We love Jumpstart. Jumpstart helps economically disadvantaged children play team sports, which is a cause that's very near and dear to Rachel and I's hearts. So all the links and everything is in our podcast description. If you can, I would consider donating to Jumpstart. And Rachel, we will be back on Thursday.